Hello, all. Today we are going to talk about Google Classroom, and this is just an introduction, but I will give you some ideas about how to start your classroom and some of the features that Google Classroom has. And so we're going to talk about how you can use it even if your students aren't one-to-one, an overview of Google Classroom, so all of the things that you can basically do with Google Classroom, how to locate your student work, as well as how you can set up a classroom. So there are a lot of things that you can do with Google Classroom even if your students aren't one-to-one or even if you're not a classroom teacher. It's a really great way to house all of your resources, your videos, your documents, your links for a unit. So you could even make a classroom for each unit, or you could make a classroom for each subject. If you have just a few devices or iPads or things like that, you could set up assignments for group collaboration, and then students can access what you have on your Google Classroom from one device to work on it together. Or you could set up as a station and you could have students work on their singular devices even though it wouldn't be at the same time as your whole class. You can use it as a class discussion starter. So you could put your classroom up on your smartboard and have it as a sounding board for all of your comments, possibly as a way to start or stop videos, things like that. Oftentimes, I use it to personalize student learning, and so I put flipped videos onto my Google Classroom and then send students to Google Classroom to be able to take a look at some of those for maybe a strategy group or things of that nature. And then you wouldn't need a device for each student, just a device for a student when they might need it. And then Google Classroom has professional learning capabilities. So you could set up a group for your PLC or maybe a team or committee, and is a great way to share resources. You can comment and you can do it from anywhere. You don't have to be together. So Google Classroom is a platform. It allows you to have a bunch of different classes or sections, and then it will organize any materials, especially Google Doc materials, into your Google Drive. Google Classroom can save you on time and paper, and one of the best things that I have found about Google Classroom is I can reuse a post from a class from last year or a different section of a class, so I don't have to recreate it. And so you'll want to set up a Google Classroom, and if you haven't done this already, you'll go to classroom.google.com. Even if you just type in Classroom into Google, it will be the first link. If you've never used Google Classroom, you'll have a class that looks similar to this. And if you have used it in the past, you will have something that looks like this. Either way, on the top, there's going to be a plus sign. That plus sign is going to allow you to create a class. So you're going to click on that plus sign and you'll click Create Class. Don't forget about this Join Class though, that will come in handy later. When you create a class, you'll want to create your name, possibly the section. So for example, I have more than one section of science, so I might put my class at Becker as a section for science for my first class, but then I have a Mahalik section as well. Some people put the years there so that they can easily determine which classes for which year. So you will then get into your Google Classroom and you'll have a class code. Your class code, I'll show you on my classroom, is going to be right here on the left. So that is what your students will put in when they want to join your class. I often write this onto the whiteboard so that they can see it bigger. You would go into your classes page. Again, your students would click Join Class, and then they would enter their class code right here. That will automatically enter them into your class. It'll automatically make them a file on their drive, and all of their materials will be placed there. You can also go in and invite students by clicking the Students tab, and you can invite individual students that way. So that would look like this. I could go to Students, and if I wanted to add more students here, I could invite them and then click their names off of my address book. This is a lot more tedious, but if you want to set things up before the school year starts or the semester or things like that, that might be a nice way to go. Or if you don't know if you'll be seeing people that you want to invite, you could invite them that way. So now we're going to get into some of the things that you can do with Google Classroom. One of the main things you often might do is create an assignment. So down at the bottom, there's going to be a plus sign. It's going to give you a menu of options, and one of them is to create assignment. A box will show up like this. So in practice, you would go to the bottom here, and you would click on Create Assignment. You're going to enter your title. You're going to enter a description of that assignment. A lot of times I end up putting all the directions of my assignment because oftentimes I use this as a flipped learning environment. You can add video. Oftentimes I add a flipped video for students. You can add documents off your computer, but what I like best is you can add Google Docs. And so I'm just going to pick a random Google Doc that I have right now. Oh, here, great. I'm thankful for. And so I can ask students to view this file. They can't edit it. I can have students be able to edit the file, but then everyone's editing on the same file. This would be great for group collaboration. Or I can make a copy for each student. Often I do this. When I make a copy for each student, when the student opens this file in their own Google Classroom, it will make a copy for them automatically, and it will name it for them with their name. Next, we're going to talk about how to create an announcement. An announcement is very similar to an assignment, but you can't add a document that you are going to have students turn in. And so if you want your students to be able to turn in something, or you want that document to show up in your Google Drive, you're going to want to create an assignment. An announcement is more for if you just have a message for students. Maybe you want to add some links or videos or flip videos you want your students to access. It's for when you just need a short snippet of information for your students. And so often I use announcements to add video, or I use announcements to quick get across a learning target, things like that. Next, the newest thing that they've created is creating a question for your students. And this is a great way to poll your students, maybe do some assessment of your students. You can show responses to all people, or you can just create a question and keep responses private. You can allow your students to reply to each other. You can reply to your students. And so it's even a way to have a grand conversation of sorts over technology. To create a question, you're going to go about the same way with the plus sign, create question. This is a question I created already. I can see that 16 have answered my question and 4 haven't. I allowed students to be able to reply to each other if they want, and I can also reply to students. If I'd like to, and I'm going to be grading these questions, I could assign a point value, and then if I'm done with that, I can return that to the student, and they'll get a message that says what I graded their question and maybe what I replied to that. Possibly my favorite part of Google Classroom, though, is reusing a post. This is my science class for Miss Mahalik class, but I also have a science class for my class. And oftentimes I want to be able to reuse a post. So let's say I wanted to reuse this energy web quest on my other classroom. So I would go to my science class, and let's say it's their turn to learn this content. So I'm going to reuse this post by going into Science Mahalik, and then it will ask me to pick any of the posts I have. And so I'm going to click Energy Web Quest. I can tell it's an assignment by this clipboard. Otherwise, I could say this would be a question or an announcement, and I could reuse that post. When it pops up, it's going to let me edit it. Oftentimes I reflect on what I've done with the class before, and I realize I might want to change the directions. I might want to add something or take something away. And so I can change this or edit it. And then I can also make a due date. Maybe I want to make it due in a week. Maybe I don't want to make it due at all, and then I would just click that button. And I would click Save, and then I would click Assign, and this is going to assign this post to my students at the top of the page. I can access my student work in 2 different ways. The first way is through Google Drive. And so if I go to my Google Drive, let's try that again. If I go to Google Drive, you're going to notice that I have a classroom tab on my drive. And so if I go to that classroom tab, it will be all of my classrooms that I have set up. And if I click on a specific classroom, I'm going to see all of the assignments I have. And so then if I click further, you'll notice that I have an assignment for each student, and each student's name was automatically put there. And so it's a great way to organize yourself and your students. You can also go to your classroom and click on the assignments in particular, and it'll show you your student work. So if I were to go to, say, my colliding marbles lab, or let's go back to Ms. Mahalick's class. The conductors and insulators, perfect. If I click on here, I'll see that 15 are done and 5 are not done. Possibly they forgot to turn it in. And it also will let me know if it was submitted late or if it's still late. And I can see where they all are. I can click on these and get right into their drive, and I can give them grades. If I choose to give them a grade, I can then click done and return, and that will return it to them so that they can see what their grade is. Often I don't use this for 4th grade, but upper elementary, maybe middle school or high school might want to use that option. So I hope that this was informative for you. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. And we would love to do another series of Google Classroom workshops. So if you have an idea of how you would like to further your Google Classroom experience, let me know and we can create another workshop for you. Thank you.